and stuff. Yep. Live now. Look, I'm live now. That's cool. Ugh, that stream quality is not very good. Sorry, streamers. Bummer.
Yeah, for some reason, your stream is like 480p and the game is like 720.
He might have amped up his settings higher than mine. Yeah, this is really looking pretty crappy right now. Let's see. Well, you know. Sorry, Charlie. You're the only one streaming today. Turn off the Sun's game, Charlie, and get back to work. All right. How was Saturday's class? Was it good? You learn a lot? Okay. Fist of 5, how are we feeling about React now? At this point in time, we've seen a lot more. Kind of all over the board. So it's starting to get a little bit more difficult, right? It's more complicated. Now we have to figure out how to do routing. We have to do all kinds of stuff, talk to APIs. So we're like basically kind of going down the same path as we did with jQuery, but now with React, right? So today we're going to talk about how to create an Express backend to fuel our React habit, right? So keep it going. We can build our own APIs, and then the last activity today, we're going to deploy a full stack React application to Heroku. So that's that. After today, technically, you know everything you need to do to build your final project. Speaking of which, we're gonna start talking about those at the end of class. Come up with your groups today, sometime in class, see break or whatever, or think about who you want to be in your group, or Slack them or whatever. Because starting on Wednesday, we're literally going to be planning our final projects. So it's coming up pretty quick. No more than 4 in a group. If you try to bring in 4, we're kicking someone out. So nope, that's not going to work. I don't advise you do less than 3 into a group. It's just a lot of work, and having fewer than 3 people is going to be very difficult for you. And each individual person is going to have incrementally more and more work the fewer people in the group. So try to do 4. I know we have an odd number, I'm pretty sure, so at least one group's going to get 3, even if everyone did pair up in 4s. I don't suspect that'll happen. I suspect we'll have more groups of 3 than groups of 4, but whatever you're most comfortable with. If you think you can get it done with 3, then by all means give it a shot. 3 is probably not too bad. It's not like you're getting a lot of extra work. But more than 4 becomes unmanageable. Less than 3, you're going to have a lot of work to do. And if you do it by yourself, it's not going to be fun at all. And to be completely honest, you probably won't finish. So it's pretty rough. I don't recommend it, but by all means, you can try. Cool. So there's one of those slide things that they have, and we're just going to skip it and go over the Pupster app that you guys didn't get to do, the Pupster activity that you didn't get to do Saturday. So we're just going to cover that solution, kind of talk about it a bit, and then move into our next set of activities where I'll kind of demo some stuff for you, and then we'll get started. And after this first activity that I demo, you guys are literally just doing activities the rest of class. Today's a really good day for just like cementing your React knowledge. So we're starting from nothing. We're starting from, hey, you don't have a React app, you need to create it from scratch. You need to create some components, you need to create some routes, you need to create some API endpoints, you need to put it all together, deploy it, right? So that's kind of today's activities, really. So it'll be a good day to solidify a lot of your knowledge. And then Wednesday, like I said, we'll work on homework, kind of answer questions, do anything we need to do, and then work on projects, really. Saturday, I honestly have no idea what we're doing Saturday. We're supposed to get a new curriculum. I couldn't say that very well. Curriculum. And I don't have it yet, so I have no idea what I'm teaching you. We might wing it. We'll see. Anyway, yeah. Pupster app. So this one was the culmination of everything you learned yesterday. There was some routing in here. There were some API calls, or Saturday, sorry. There were some API calls in here. Let's take a look at what the app looks like when it's running. So this is the home page. Look, a puppy. It's amazing. You can go here and just go to the about, kind of see what's going on. We can go search, which I was doing not too long ago. Just a little bit ago. Oh my god. Mind you, this is the actual solution. I could barely get it to work. It's pretty frustrating. And look at that. Cute Great Danes. They're awesome. Oh, look at the puppy. Look at, I just love puppies. They're so cute, right? I do. I love dogs, right? So you see pictures of dogs, you're like, oh, what a great day. I don't know. If you don't like dogs, I'm sorry for you. What?
What a great day.
That wasn't very good. Apparently this Tinder for dogs is kind of weird. I don't know if I'm up with that, but we're friends. They don't like me very much, though. Hey, it's a numbers game. Yeah, right? Eventually. Someone will swipe back. Anyway, that's the Pupster app. That's what we were supposed to make. So let's look at the source. Well, you know, I don't know if it was intended to be that way, but this day and age, you just... Trilogy's whole goal is to make this class exciting for you, Garrett. And so they have, I think, succeeded. Yeah. Okay, so let's look at the app structure. So you guys have the solve, so you can walk through it with me if you'd like. If you just want to kind of watch, then by all means, that's okay. So starting at the index.js, nothing too crazy here. But it's where we get to the app.js that things really start to change. So, you guys all remember the router stuff that you went over on Saturday? Or at least a bit about it, right? It allows us to kind of simulate what it's like to navigate to different pages in React. We can't actually do that. It's a misnomer to think we can. But what we can do is kind of trick the browser. We can make it look like we're reloading a new page, and we can have the browser change the URL and say, oh, we're on this page now, which is great. And that's all well and good, but it's not actually going to a different page. It's just kind of changing what's rendering on your current view, right, with JavaScript. JavaScript's just changing what's there. It's just changing the DOM. So we're not actually going anywhere or doing anything. You can imagine this makes it a little bit tricky to do things like history and all that stuff, and it does. And I'll warn you, when you get to actually deploying these kinds of apps, it comes a real pain, because if I deploy it, I don't deploy it right, and I try to go to whatever /about, it's possible that that path doesn't exist. Not actually, right? And your server's like, what are you doing? So you'll run into that, though. When you get there, you're like, ah, what's going on? I'm like, I told you, you know, so that'll be fun. Anyway, the React router. So we have this React router DOM package that we use. It has two components that we're generally going to use. The browser router, which is, I forget exactly why it's the one we use. There's a history router, but you don't use that one anymore. I honestly cannot remember why we use the browser router, but just use that one. It's whatever one. It's better. And then we have these route components, which are the specialized, like, higher order components that are used to basically take in any component and render them as a quote-unquote page in your application. So the rule we have to have is one of these routers, history router, browser router, a hash fragment router, whatever one you use. And we have to wrap our other route components in that. It doesn't matter where exactly they're mounted in there. They just need to be in there somewhere. And so you can see we have a div actually is the first thing. And then we have a whole navbar component. And in that navbar component, after the navbar component, we actually have a wrapper with our routes in it. So our routes don't exactly render anything per se. They render the content of the component that you pass in. That's kind of what our wrapper here represents. It represents the rest of the application, right? And the navbar represents the different links. So a few things to note. This exact keyword right here, this is a Boolean prop on the route component that says the path has to be just slash. If it's just slash, then this is the component we render. If it's /a or /? Or something, it won't work. It has to be just slash. /about has to be just /about. You can't do /about/1 or whatever, or /search/Dane or whatever to automatically search. It has to be an exact match. It's really useful because when we do get into more complex routes that do have parameters or something, if you have certain routes that are marked as exact, they won't accidentally get triggered by inexact routes that are using parameters, right? So We'll get to that though. And then you just tell it the component that you actually want to render when you go to that path. So we're going to render the about page as our default home page, and also if we go to /about, then the discover page if we go to that path, or the search page if we go there. Right, so any questions on the React router? And just how we're using it here. It's pretty simple, but in terms of routers and how they go, it's not a simple component to use, and it's kind of confusing, especially how it actually renders the routes, because it feels like it's real routing, but it's actually not. But in terms of actually using these components right here, they're pretty simple once you figure out how to use them, right? Alright, so let's look at the nav bar actually, because there's a lot of interesting functionality in there. And this is how we actually use our routes, right? So we have a new component from React Router DOM called the link component, and the link component effectively acts as an href for an anchor tag. Not really, but it effectively is that. What it really does is hooks into the router state stuff, and it changes the route for you. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Excuse me. Anyway, as you can see, we have a nav right here, and this is just the Bootstrap nav bar stuff. And then we have these links, and these links map to a path. So in this case, when we click on this link right here, this is Pupster, it's going to take us to just slash. This link is going to take us to just slash, and if we happen to be on the about or the slash path, which is what this represents, then it's going to say it's the active link. So it's going to give it special CSS, right? This bad boy right here is going to take us to /discover, and if the URL has /discover in it, we're going to go ahead and change the style on there with the active class. And the same thing happens down here with the /search, right? So there's nothing too crazy about this. If we actually look at the HTML that's rendered, that's this bad boy, right? So here's the /about. Oh, it changed. Here's the /discover. It changed. /search. It changed. So the URL's changing. And it's not kind of a fair test, because if I hit enter, it'll actually take me to the page I'm intending to go to. But if you were hosting this yourself, you'd find out quickly that this doesn't work. But it doesn't change it because it's prefixing it to just slash, right? So it's trimming it. But anyway, this is how you do navigation. So you can take these links from React Router DOM and put them in any component you want and navigate, right? So if you need to navigate from clicking save or whatever you needed to navigate, or click here to go back or whatever you needed to navigate, you can do. Clicking save is not a good one. You actually navigate a different way, but this is how you would have hyperlinks that would go to other parts of your React app. Questions on this component and how the links work?
Yeah, so when we're clicking on these links, we're not actually sending any requests to the server.
Correct. You're not sending any requests to the server when you click on these links. No requests at all. It's just telling JavaScript to re-render some stuff.
But you're going to teach us how to do it.
I'm going to teach you how to do that next, yes. Any other questions on this file? Alright, let's see. Let's look at another component. Let's look at the search page. So search is kind of nice because there's a few API calls that we can make here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and open up the API as well. Pupster. Open it next to it so you can kind of at least see them. So the life cycle. Do we all remember a component did mount? So that happens as soon as the component's done mounting, right? The component did mount. And that is the perfect time for us to make any calls to an API, to do anything that would require asynchronous processing or something along those lines that will probably change the state of the component. If there's a potential for it to change the state, remember it can't be in render. We don't want to really put it in the constructor unless it's intended to be the default state. And you don't want to put it in the will mount because you could cause problems too. So you just want to put it in the did mount, especially if it's asynchronous. Will mount, if it's asynchronous, you call it will mount, I think it can cause problems. So you don't want to do that. The did mount is your best bet because everything's done. Good, the page is rendered. We're happy, right? So anyway, the first thing it does is it calls this get base breeds list, which is right here, which just calls out to this dog API that we have access to with Axios. So boom, it just goes ahead and returns a promise that's going to have all of our data. If it fails, we'll just console log it. This is not good error handling. I do not recommend you just console log errors because your user will be like, what's going on? But it works fine for this little app. But if things go well, we'll get a response back. We can go ahead and get our breeds out, which are going to come back as looks like an array in this data.message from our response, right? So we'll just do a set state call here, and bada bing, bada boom. We've got a new component with some state. So it's going to cause a re-render there. Nothing's really going to happen on the re-render because you can see this is just a nice container. Just shows information about search. There will be an alert that happens in some cases, but we haven't triggered that yet because we don't have an error. And then the search form's not going to do anything, but it's going to allow us to use those breeds to search. And then the search results, which won't have anything either. So everything except for the breeds is going to be empty, and the breeds just go into the search form and do something else. So this component's not really going to, it's going to re-render, but we may not see anything visually change. At least not here. Maybe in search form we will. And then we also set up some form submits, input changes. So when our input changes, we have a search value and state that we just want to be updated. Real simple kind of event handler. No problem there. When we do form submit, we have to do our event prevent default. Then we can say, hey, go take the breed we're searching for, and let's go ahead and ping that API. So right here, we pass in the breed. Very simple, appends things together, so if you use a space, it's going to fail. And it goes and gets a bunch of images. When that comes back, we jump back here. If there's an error, we'll go ahead and throw that error, which will cause some problems, and we'll see it right away. It will catch it right here, the error, and then display it on the screen with that alert. Otherwise, we're going to just save our results as that array of dog images. When that happens, search results will be triggered with the re-render, and they will render those images. So before I ask if anyone has questions on this, why don't we look at the search form and the search results. Let's see, search form index. So the search form, it's going to take in the breeds, remember, and some events, form submit, and an input change. So here's the input change, just input on change. As we type in there, boom, 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 the state's going to change. The search value is the last thing we typed, right? So it's going to come back in through the props from the state of this component up here. And then we have this data list that's going to store information about the breeds, and it's going to be part of the autocomplete, I assume. I've never actually used a data list. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, that's probably going to be that autocomplete that comes down when you're searching. Those are all the different breeds you can search for. And then when you hit submit, we go ahead and call that handle form submit. Okay, so this one's not actually going to change anything when the breeds are loaded, not until we start typing. And we can verify that. Let's go ahead and go to search. They're already loaded, nothing's happened, but as soon as I click on it, the data list loads up. There are all the breeds. So the data lists are just associated with the inputs. It's an autocomplete. Look at that. Today I learned you can use a data list. It's nice. Any questions on the search form? The search results. So the search results a little different. When we get results back, those are those images. It's going to map over all of them and create an LI tag inside of an unordered list that has an image of the dog. That's it. Just going to map over them. Boom. Render them all. So that's our search in its entirety. Questions on the search and how the search works?
So when does it send back and get that result? To the API?
After you hit submit.
Okay, so that's in the function, right? That's the old one.
Yep. So it'll take the search text that you currently have, it'll hit the API, get a result back, change the state. Yep, and feed that back to the component. let's look at the Discover page. So the Discover page has a lot going on. So we're going to go ahead from our API and get a random dog. Get random dog. There's just a random dogs endpoint on this API, so that's convenient. We can go ahead and render out some header text. We can render out a card that has the image of the dog, the random dog that we found. See right up here. We have a handle button click, which is going to do some match information. It's going to try to match us with a dog. There's the match count, so how many times we've been matched. So that's probably going to happen in this handle button click right here. It's going to determine if we've matched. And then every time we do match, it's going to say, yay, you have a friend. You know, this pup liked you. So the handle button click, we go ahead and click in. We're going to go ahead and find which target it is that we were clicking. So this is just like a jQuery when we'd store a bunch of information in like a data attribute or something, right? And we'd want to pull it out to know what we were doing exactly. You could do it like this, right? With the data attribute. Pull it out. This is our button type. We can determine from the button type if we said yay or nay. If we said yay, we wanted to pick the person, then we can see randomly if we matched with them. And if we did, we can go ahead and up the matches, right? And then we can set our new state and see what happens. Load the next random dog. So I know I'm going pretty fast, but if you have specific questions, let me know. And this card right here isn't going to be anything too crazy. Just got a couple of buttons that are going to represent our thumbs up and our thumbs down. So that was fast overview of this Pupster thing. I know it wasn't very in-depth, but I at least wanted to go over it with you guys so you could see the solution since you didn't get time to go over it. And it's a good refresher, right, to get us going. So any questions on the Pupster stuff before we move on? We've got another demo to go over, and then you guys are off to the races. You're writing code the rest of the class.
Yeah, I have a question. In the app JavaScript, what? I'm sorry.
Which one? The search form?
Yes.
This one?
Yeah, some of these, the style is passed through, and the props, and I'm not sure why.
Well, passing style through props is pretty much preference. So if your parent has some state that can determine what your style is going to look like, then you might want to pass it through. If they don't, then there's no reason to. It can be self-contained in the component, right?
Right, yeah.
So unless you have a reason that props can derive state for you or something, or state of a parent can derive state for you, there's no reason to pass it in. So it's a preference thing. Any other questions on this? Cool. Let's jump to the next example. All right. So I had a ton of fun getting this bad boy to work, but I did, so that's good news. So what we're going to cover for the most part today is how we can take these React apps that we've been building and turn them into fully functional MERN stack apps, right? We're not adding Mongo today, but Express Node React, earn. So yeah, we're earning that certificate. That's what we're doing today. Anyway. So this is activity 7. If you want to go ahead and open up and kind of follow along, feel free. It's there for you. There's not a solution or anything. It's just there. You'll notice first things first, in this top level folder, this Create React Express, we have a server.js and a package.json. But we don't have any of the React stuff yet. And that translates, the server.js translates to this bad boy right here. It's just a very, very, very simple Express app. Right? We're requiring Express, some other stuff, set a port. We're going to go ahead and set some static stuff. I added this in here for testing. That's not there. Same with this. If we're in production mode, we can go ahead and serve up the actual React code. If we're not, we're going to do things a little differently, and I'll show you that. If you need API routes, you can define them here. Otherwise, there's this app get star, which is just every request that we can't possibly handle, return client build index HTML, which basically is our way of hosting this React app ourselves if we wanted to. And then just your app listen. Now inside the client folder, we have the actual Create React app. And there's not much here. This is just your basic Create React app, okay? So there's nothing fancy at all. Now there's a couple questions.
You got two packages, JSON.
We do have two package JSONs because they're different projects. Technically. They have their own scripts and everything, right? So that's a good observation, because here at the top level we need the Express packages, Express and stuff like that, but we don't need React here. React is totally unimportant to Express. They're not related at all. It just so happens you can use them. You can use Express as your server and React as your client, right? So right here we have some scripts that can help us build both, but for the most part this is just an Express app. Just right now imagine it's an Express app. And then down in here we have our another package JSON that represents our React client. And so this is when you do the Create React app. You know, these are all those built-in scripts that you'd get, with one extra thing, and that's this proxy right here that I'll explain in a little bit. But setting this bad boy up. Alright, so I've already set it up, but I'll go through the steps again. So right here, let's clear. I'm in the root level, right? So you can see I'm not in the client or anything. Just do npm install. It'll install everything, and it should install the dependencies of the client as well. It should do both at the same time. And then you can see right here the second command, cd client and then npm install. So it's going into the client folder, doing another install. There you go. We have all of our packages for both set up. Nice. Now if we want to go in dev mode, we have the script right here. We have a start that we can use that does a check. If we're in production mode, then we're going to start in production. Otherwise, we're going to start in dev. So I'm just going to let it go and start in dev for now. So yarn start or npm run start, whatever one. It's going to go ahead and open the Create React app to port 3000. No problem. Come on. Localhost 3001. Alright, so this one fails. Right now, we're going to fix that in a little bit. Does anyone, off the top of their head, have any idea why this fails? Extra points. You're done with the class. You can go home. I'll give you your certificate. No? Okay. I gave you all a chance. Anyway, so here is localhost 3000. So this is just our normal Create React app, right? You do yarn start. It opens up. You can see right here when I did yarn start, it's opening it in dev mode. So we're gonna see this code right here. If end node is production, then run in prod. Otherwise, or run in dev. We don't have node end set to production, so it's gonna run in dev mode. And what it does in start dev is it runs nodemon on the client, or it runs nodemon right here with the server.js, and it also at the same time does npm run on the client. Npm run client comes down here, cd's in the client, and does npm run start. So that's your yarn start or whatever, right? So what it's doing is running nodemon for the server.js at the same time as it's running yarn start or npm run start right here in this client folder. So it's firing off both. So how can we test that? If I just go in here and I do app.get /test res, oops, so I can have a nice little JSON response here. I can add it in. I have nodemon on, so it should, in theory, restart it. If I want to test really quick, that's a bad one. I'll open up Postman. Let's just see, make sure it's all working. Whoa, Postman. Oh my word.
Whoa.
I think I'm okay. And then we did /test. There you go. Got a message. Okay, so it's working. NodeMon's refreshing. It's fantastic, right? So I said in this client package JSON, we have this proxy. Now that URL, HTTP localhost port 3001, happens to be the same that I am running NodeMon on, right? It's running my Express server on. Boom. Well, it just so happens when you're developing React apps like this, where we do create React app and we have a server running, which is almost always, you usually want to be able to communicate with the server like you're running it in production, right? So you want them to either come from the same URL or kind of work together. So if I'm in this React app and I have, let's go ahead, I'm going to shut this down. Let's go to client. I'm going to install Axios really quick. Import Axios. So we have Axios, right? This would be, yep. I'll get that running again. Okay. Oh, I get it. So we have Axios, and I want to make a request to that API that I have. So I have state defined, everything's well and good. Component did mount, we're going to call that because we can call APIs. Now with Axios, if I'm calling to a separate API, something that's not the same port, not the same host, I would have to do something like, right? Because I'm not the same port as my server. However, create React app, they thought about this. They said, okay, we're in dev. We're going to have two different processes running, one on port 3000, one on 3001. Any unnamed URL that you use with like Axios or Fetch is then routed to that proxy. So it's going to automatically hit the 3001 for me. Set state. And I can do res.data, I think. It should route to port 3001 for me and automatically do this test call without me having to do anything else. So already I'm off to a good place. I'm in a good place because I can test like I'm in production where I'm going to be hosting off the same port, which I'll show you again in a moment, when I'm really in development running two different processes. Now this is helpful. Why? Because I can do hot reloading on both. I can have NodeMon running on my server, and I can have the Browserify stuff with Create React App running on my browser. I can hot reload both. I've got a very interactive environment. I'm making a lot of changes. Things are reloading. Boom, it's exploding. My computer's catching on fire. It's crazy. Anyway, it's very fast and iterative, right? It makes this process very easy and very flexible. That's why we want it. So let's see it actually work. I'm talking a lot, and that's nice, but... Alright, so this state.message. No messages yet. So hopefully this re-renders. Ooh, it says hello. Now, if we want to see it in action, we can go to our sources. Let's go to our app. Alright, let's reload this bad boy. So, it's going to render. Our state is nothing. So it should say, oh man, the breakpoint's not firing here. Bummer. This is why arrow functions sometimes suck. Anyway, you can see that it's actually making a call to that test endpoint on port 3001, right? I mean, that's where I set up that endpoint. I don't know of a port 3000 that /test that returns hello. Just in case you're skeptical. I know some of you are. There you go. You can see the changes. So that's really, really nice, right? I can also, I'm pretty sure, go here and I can do a direct call if I want. Didn't work, probably because of CORS errors, actually. So it also gets around CORS errors. Yep, see? Has been blocked by CORS policy. So that proxy also gets around those errors, which are really, really irritating and hard to get around. Although we should talk about that at some point, because they're not that bad, but you just gotta figure out how to get around them. Anyway, proxy, very important. It overrides that default, you know, no URL call that you would make with like fetch or something, and sends it to the proxy instead. It's very, very convenient. Okay, so great. We know how it works from development. We've seen all this cool stuff we can do. It's fantastic. I love it. Questions so far on what we've seen? Simple Express app. The Express app shouldn't be too crazy. Now I'm going to go a little bit into this other stuff right here. This production, this endpoint. But any questions about anything I've shown you up until this point? Okay. So what does this all mean? Well, what's happening with this code, especially this part right here, is if we're in production mode, so if there's some environment variable, it's node_env, and it equals the string production quite literally, then we're going to set a static directory to client/build. Client/build is right here. Oh, what is this? These are the build artifacts from our React create React app process. So when we do yarn start or whatever, it runs the dev process and it just opens it in the browser. We don't see any of these artifacts, nothing. But you can actually run yarn build right here, and it's going to actually build the things that you're going to need to run in production. All right, so it does the whole build process and it returns the artifacts. So we get this crazy monster right here that's like our HTML page. And then we get a bunch of, like, this is what your React turns into. Whoa, you know, it's pretty awesome. But that's the actual code that's being served to the browser. So here we're saying, okay, if we're in production mode, we need to use that real code. And remember, we need to set express static on the directories where we want to be able to host or serve up static files. So that problem we were getting earlier where I would go to localhost 3001 and it would just show nothing and then say there was an error, because I didn't have express static set up, it was getting the wrong MIME type on those files, so it thought they were all HTML when it was freaking out. So if you get that problem, so I'll show you. This is a tricky one, and I know people have already run into it. So if we run into that problem, oh, it looks good. I have the favicon, but I get unexpected token of, like, nothing. I don't know. It's just saying in my chunk.js. That's a JS file. Well, you can go to your network. Chunk.js says it's a script. Okay. But for some reason, because it's saying this, uncaught syntax, unexpected token, it's actually treating this as an HTML file or something. It actually has no idea what it's treating it as. And the reason is why is we're expecting this chunk.js, but we're not serving up any static files because this code was never hit because we're not in production mode yet. And we have this catch-all route right here that says anything I get back and I don't know how to handle it, send back the HTML. So what it's doing is we don't have any static files set up, so it has no idea how to find that chunk.js. So it just goes to here, it defaults to here, sends back the HTML from the index HTML, and then goes, this is not JavaScript. I have no idea what you're talking about. And it freaks out. So that's how you know that you have something seriously wrong and how you're serving up your React. Alright, how do we fix that? That's all well and good. So the easiest way on Mac and Linux, you cannot do this on Windows, of course, is you just do node env, set it equal to production, and then do node and your server.js. API server is on port 3001. Let's go up here. Boom. This is a production-like environment with React. Now, I haven't rebuilt since I added my code changes. So why don't I go back and I do that? I can go to the client, and I can do yarn build. or npm run build. It's going to rebuild it with my changes. It takes a long time. It's optimizing the build, so that was the base code took 8.35 seconds. So when you have a large app, it takes a long time to do an optimized build. I will warn you. That's a really good question. If you count building the npm install and everything, Gitkraken took like 6 or 7 minutes. But that was with the npm install and a whole bunch of stuff. Some of the websites we worked on that were large were like 45 seconds to a minute. So that's long. When you're doing it a lot, that's long.
Oh, yeah, because you're like trying to move quick.
Yeah, you change one line and you're like, right, and that's where you change one letter, one semicolon on the stack.
All right. Well, this is sending out. This source isn't the source I want, so for some reason it's not building it. But anyway, this is like the production version of our app, right? So once we get into production mode, we're like literally telling it, hey, why don't you serve up that index.html that we find right in here? Yeah, that's what it actually looks like. And then any of the static assets we have, you can get them from the client build folder. So if we look at the index.html, if we beautify this, you can see we have static CSS main, some crazy number, got chunk CSS, and oh, look at that, that's where it is. Right, so it'll go find it from that client build folder because we told it to. Now, why it's not getting my app.js changes, beyond me. I don't know. It just isn't. Let's go ahead and delete this. Alright. So this one also has a script in it. Build right here, which actually CDs in the client and runs the build for you. And then we should be able to run our production, and theoretically it should work. I don't know why it's not working. The build is caching something or something, I don't know. Anyway, that is how we can do a, that's how we can create ourselves a nice little React full MERN stack, right? The ERN stack. You just create a nice little Express app right here. We have this catch-all that returns the index.html we want. And then it just needs to have a static path so it can serve up the other assets that, or the other, the other assets that React is going to generate in its build process. Right here. Assuming you can go ahead and serve those bad boys up, you're probably pretty good. And remember too, you want to take advantage of both NodeMon and Browserify, so you need to have a different process for development. So that's when you're going to need that proxy. It's in here. So questions about what we just saw? I know it was a lot. Anything that people want me to clarify? Cool. Well,
Oh, yeah.
excellent. You're about to get your hands dirty doing it yourself. Right? I'm going to give you like 5 minutes to do it, and then we might walk through it together. Because this, I expected this one to be a little overwhelming. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts we're getting into. Now, here's my first experience with React. Granted, I was a developer for a while at the time, but I came into this ecosystem knowing nothing about any of these pieces and had to figure them all out, and I didn't the first time. I said, this is horrible. There's like 50 different things going on. I have no idea, and they didn't even have create React app then. So this is an extremely intimidating thing to approach, even as a seasoned developer, when you come in new. And you guys are coming in new. You may know JavaScript, but this environment's still very, very new. So I failed at learning this a couple of times before I actually sat down and took the time to figure out all the different parts and put it together. because there's a lot. It's very overwhelming. So that's okay. You can be overwhelmed. We'll slowly kind of get used to it. And today's class is literally just start here, build upon it, build upon it, build upon it, so we can kind of get more familiar, right? So activity number 8 is the one you're going to do. You're going to have a React Recipes app that you're going to have to work with. Basically, you're going to get a similar structure to this, and you're going to have to add some endpoints to the API side of it and make those work, right? So go ahead and start working on that for a little bit, and then I might jump in a few minutes to try to help you.
Every time. I'm gonna miss that one day.
No.
There's 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so maybe, yeah, I like the thing, and it, so when I push my React app groups, now the page auto loads the region that got pushed up. Really? Yeah, so like my URL for the page is the region from the yarn, or from the Create React app. Makes no sense, yeah. I tried running, following this tutorial, I thought what just happened. It was so further than I got. Into the unsolved folder, right?
Team solo. That might have been your last day cutting hair. She quit.
You know, she can't quit until after tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going platinum.
That'll do that, actually.
It's a process. One day I'll get to do it.
Actually, it's not really the hair, it's more of a devil lock, but it's straight up mid isn't black.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
I don't want to say fancy.
I'll
I'll give it a
it.
blend.
There you go. I'm gonna come in one day and throw hot.
All right, do you guys want to try to go through this one together, or?
Yes.
Oh. Oh, sorry, Rolando, you were overruled. All right. So from the root, you're gonna have this. Do you guys have the server.js and the client and all that stuff already?
Yeah.
Okay. First thing you should do is yarn install from the root. Make sure you got everything you need. Alright, when you got that, yarn install done, do a yarn start, and let's see what we got. Nice. Alright, we should all be here, right? Okay, so the first part says we're really only going to have to change the app.js for right now. We're going to use the recipe list and the recipe list item components to render our recipe items to the screen when our API comes back with the recipes. So using the recipe list component as a container, map over this.state.recipes and render one recipe list item component for each recipe object in the array. Pass the rendered recipe list item components each property of the recipe object, i.e. title, href, ingredients, and thumbnail. Okay, so we have our recipes. They come from state. They're an array. Right here's where we're going to put them. Render recipes here. So the first thing is a recipe list. It's the first thing we need. We already know we're going to have a recipe list, and then we need to render individual recipe list items. So the first thing we need to do is curly braces, because we're going to have to do this as an expression, right? And we'll use this.state.recipes and then call map. your map function should just be a recipe R, whatever you want to call it, goes to, and then just some open parentheses. Because we're just going to return a component directly. Alright, so in here, you hit enter. We can pick the recipe list item, and it can just be self-closing for now. I don't think we're going to need anything there. So, we can cheat and just do .r. But because doing this in real code is horrible because I have no idea what the props actually are, so thank you, we're not going to do that. So we'll do title, r.title, href equals r.href. What's it? Ingredients equals r.ingredients. And then the last one is thumbnail. Thumbnail equals thumbnail. Man, that other one sure was easy though. That's why people do it. Yeah, it's easy, low effort. Everything's passed through, but guess what? I have no idea what props that thing is actually using, so thanks. Alright. This is part 1. Everyone with me? No, you don't need an H1. Oh, God. It did not like that.
Mine works, but it prints printing the...
It should print the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's printing the recipe that's in the list item by default a bunch of times.
I'm getting just a bunch of HTML back, so that's cool.
Yarn install.
Yeah, I did the yarn install. Should work. Ooh, it did not like that. Oh. Damn it. We did it. I figured it out. Alright, so mine now. Yeah. Mine has an array of nothing. There we go. Alright, so we should all be here, right? Get the same thing over and over and over again. It's beautiful. It's art. Okay, so in this next section, part 2, what? Okay, so we're going to move on to part 2. Now that we have all of those recipes just repeating, what we need to do is render the recipe list item without the hard-coded recipe data. So we're going to modify the recipe list item component so that it utilizes all the passed-in props where appropriate. Look at the hard-coded data to determine how each prop should be used. So remember, we have a title, href, ingredients, and thumbnail. So if we open up the recipe list index, the recipe list item, we know we're going to have title, href, ingredients, and thumbnail. Make our lives easier, we can destructure the props. Title, ingredients, href, and thumbnail. And that's exactly what we should do. Makes it a little bit easier to see what's coming into that component, and you can kind of view it as a function. So thumbnail is easy. It's going to go right here, right? Where this JPEG is. Boom. Thumbnail. This H3 is probably going to be our title. Boom. Title. Oh, this is ingredients. That'll probably be our ingredients. We might be able to leave the ingredients colon in there just in case. We'll see what actually is returned from the API because I have no idea. So why don't we do this? Ingredients. And then we need our href. So let's look. It says it's compiled successfully. That's good. Boom. Nice, that looks good. I'll go back to the code, don't worry. So we're not going to do the bonus on this one, because I don't care about it. So, that's it. We didn't have to change the API on this one. We just had to kind of change how React works a little bit to render what we wanted to render. Yes, Rolando?
Where would we shove the key that it's complaining about?
Where would we put the key that it's complaining about? Is there like an ID or something?
Not really. Just those four.
It says each child or of the array or iterator should have a key.
Yes, it is complaining about the key, so we're just going to use the title. So, what is the key? Does anyone remember what the key is?
Unique identifier?
Yeah, it's a unique identifier in the list that needs to be the same every time we render the list for a like item, right? So if your key is 1, every time we render that item, its key should always be 1. Reason why is React can use that to efficiently render lists. It can decide based off of keys if things have changed or been removed or whatever very quickly, right? And it can decide, you know, how it's going to re-render based off of that information. So it's a little bit more efficient when we have keys, and it also keeps things from duplicating and like weird behaviors. So we need that key. Forgot about that. And we should be... don't worry about the manifest. Stupid. Any questions on this exercise? We will Slack out this solution. No one's asking questions. So, activity 9. It's on you guys. Immediately go into activity 9. So, you're going to be starting a book site. And we're going to be building this book site for the rest of class until we deploy it.
This last example was not using... Was it using a server in the background?
It is using a server, yes. Don't forget to shut down your servers when you're done. TAs will Slack out the solution for you. But now we're going to work on React Books. Ajax Books. Activity 9. So, give you some time to work on that. Then we'll cover it.
You probably left, something here. Oh yeah. Right foot. Okay, so well, I have one. Oh, you put up a model and then without that.
Okay. Nice. we're going to go over this example. I know that wasn't a lot of time. Okay. So what we had was an API that has some book stuff. We want to get information about books. And we also have a create React app that's meant to render those books. And we're going to have to add the ability for this create React app to call to the books API and render the books. So, first thing we need to do is run yarn from the root. So, run yarn installs. Then we want to run yarn seed, which can then call the seed script and populate our MongoDB with some data for us. If we do yarn start, we should be able to see the base of the app. Nice. But there's nothing loading quite yet. No results display. Even though we ran the seeds, and if you check your MongoDB, we know at this point that there is some book data, right? Everyone good with me here? Alright. So we'll leave that running. We need to add code to go ahead and load the books. So we know that we're going to call it from the component didMount, because that's where we do anything that we have to change state. We have to wait till the component didMount, especially if it's going to be an asynchronous action. We could go ahead and call it directly from in there, but why don't we create another function? We'll call it load books. We are going to go ahead and make sure when we open up this API, so this API already has our Axios calls, so we don't actually need to even do anything special here. But we need to import in our API. Import API from API. Now we have our API. So from here, API has a function called getBooks, which we can call. And set books to res.data, because it's just going to return a JSON array, basically. And if we have an error, we'll just console log it for now. And let's just call load books on the component didMount. Boom, our books. Everyone with me on this? Any questions? So, what did we have to do? We had to make sure everything was set up. We had to populate our database, verify that everything could run. Then we needed to go ahead and import in this getBooks call from the API, which we can see uses Axios to just call the books API endpoint, which is right here. It just does a find all against Mongoose. Really simple. And returns the result there. And then we can go ahead and call it from this load books function. Why did we create a load books function? Well, in case we want to call load books another way. Say we delete a book or save a book and we want to call load books again. It's easier than writing this API.getBooks over and over. Any questions on this activity? Stephanie or Chris will Slack out the solution so you can use it for the next activity if you would like, or you can use yours. We're going to move to activity 10, where we're going to add the ability to delete books. So we're going to have a form. We're going to click a button that allows us to delete books from this list.
at so many different things. Okay, so there's all these track files. We're going to try to do a git pull. It tells us that we have to basically, if you go to the top.
Do you need any of these?
No. We've been trying to blow them away. We cannot figure out how. I tried to.
No, that's the point I go want to ask if you guys can do it in 10 seconds because I'm like, oh.
File mode changes.
It was, yeah. Hopefully we actually finished this soon. Well, I know it turns off while it's doing it.
Well, as now.
The latest mugshot is the one you guys see. He's not doing that. That's what we used to look like. See that? Part of check out his cover.
Yeah. And I noticed that there was like 12 different.
Let me check. Someone else might have jacked it up. So he has the most recent code.
Yeah.
So he's good there. Okay. Why is his... Justin, what are you doing?
I know what I was doing. I wanted to ask you guys that. I only know two things. Get stash, get full.
That'll get you pretty far.
Yeah, you're right.
Change it to get. Merge branch master. Why does he have a merge commit? I don't want the merge commit.
You stumped Carson.
That's not a good thing.
That's not an easy thing.
There's something really wacky about what you do, what you have here.
Yeah.
Chris has been in control of that machine for the last 20 minutes.
I have not done any
This
merge
is not all
commits.
we need at this point.
I've not done any merge commits.
Yeah, it's like the car head. Living on fire.
All I've done is try to delete untracked and tracked files.
Yeah.
That's also an option.
Dude, just do that because what happened is you have file mode changes that you somehow have, and I can't reset past them, and I forget how to ignore it on Windows. So it keeps just like doing these files. So I have all your files up to date, but you have these weird change sets that just keep showing up. So I don't know what you did, but just get rid of it and start over.
I was doing rn-rf. Okay. Over. And then do a get one. So yeah.
The thing is, get file mode changes on Windows aren't a real thing, so you have an invalid state in your repo, which somehow happened. So good job. I don't know whose fault it is. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying it's awesome.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't even know how you got in that state, so it's probably a mixture of something on the remote happening that was weird. Maybe someone... It's very possible that someone committed some bad code because they have file mode changes, and now it's being propagated to all you guys. So we'll find out if you guys pull and everyone's machine's messed up. Rimder. In the Git bash, you can do RMRF. So if you're in the, yeah, dash RF and then just star or that directory. Well, if he's in the directory, he can do star. It's not a big deal. Yeah, C colon RM-RF star. You're gonna have a fun time with that one, Justin.
I would think it would leave my goddamn code. Put it in the C drive.
Oh, don't laugh, I've seen people do it.
I did it once. I did it in the C Windows folder, actually. Even better.
Oh, that's better.
It did not go well.
Sort of. We had a boss of mine had a secretary that did that on the root directory in C.
Yeah, I mean, the best part is unintended things happen. So it's like, it doesn't look like anything bad happened because it's like, oh, you're protected, right? Because we can't let you destroy all this stuff. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm going to open up Windows Firewall. It's like, I can't open that. You're like, oh, shit. I lost my firewall options.
It's all good fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, I need to do a system recovery. What's that? Never heard of those before. Oops. Alright, y'all ready to go over this exercise? Maybe? We'll find out. Let me go into the solve directory. Bless you. Alright, in this one we had to make sure that the book's title, author, and synopsis are being added to the form properly when you click on a book. And then we need to make sure when we click the delete button, it deletes. Oh, this one also does saving. And also save. Alright. Let me look at your unsolved code to see what's different. Really quick, give you a couple more minutes. Okay, so this is what you guys all had. And what we need to do is change it. In the first part, we needed to change it so we can save a new book, right? So in our state, we have a title, an author, and a synopsis. So let me just run yarn really quick. It'll be done soon. Almost, we're getting there. Okay, let's start it up. And we're here. Alright, so we need to get the inputs to match up with these parts of state, and then that means we also need to have our state change when we change the inputs, and then we need to be able to click a button and save, right? So the first thing we should do is set up our inputs so that they're more React-like, which is really easy when you can paste. So we had a title in the state. We can assign the value to the title control input. We have the author, which we can assign to the author input. Then we have a synopsis, which is more open-ended, right? It could be a paragraph even. We'll assign that to the synopsis text area. Right? So these three bad boys right here matched up to these values. Now notice too that the state property and the name of the input are exactly the same. It's going to help you out in the future. It's something you want to do. Now, this shouldn't work out too well because we don't have a handle input change function yet. But the handle input change function is basically going to take in an event. It's going to interrogate that event for the target control input that's being changed and update state based off of the name of that input. And that only works because the state properties and the names of the inputs are exactly the same. So we can take the event target, destructure it, pull out the name and the value, and then update state. So at this point, if we go back to our little example, we should be able to type in here. Nothing too crazy yet. But we can do it. So, something's happening. Now what do we need to do? We need to update the form button to be able to be clicked and to be able to submit. So first things first, because the author and the title are required, we need to add a disable check to make sure that they both exist. And we can do that like this. So if the state and the author, or if the author and the title, if either one does not exist, it's disabled. Because remember, if both of them exist, it's going to return a true. And then we'll reverse that and do false, so it's not disabled, right? If either one doesn't exist, we'll return false, so it'll reverse it and do true. And then on click will be a handle form submit. So the handle form submit can take in an event. We'll do event prevent default. We can do another check to make sure that there's a title and an author. And if there is, we can go ahead and call the save book API, which is just going to go ahead and take the title, author, and synopsis in, and probably make a post request, I would assume, to the server. We can check it out real quick. Save book. Yep, just takes the data in with a post, so it's going to turn it to some JSON. Pass it on in. If everything goes well, we can go ahead and reload the books. So we can go here and test. Test by test. Part 1 is now complete. I'll make this a little smaller. Alright, the second part. We need to be able to delete books. So, let's look at our delete button. It's just kind of nothing right now. But we need to add the ability to delete those on click, right? So why don't we create a function first that we can call delete book. That allows us to pass in an ID and call the delete from the API. We already have it. And then if it deletes successfully, we can reload the book. So let's just make sure the delete button has a click handler. It will. So what do we got to have here? We have to have an onClick function, right? Well, instead of building an entire handler, because this isn't a submit button, we don't need to do event prevent default or anything. You can just go ahead and pass onClick in as a function. An unevaluated function, right? And it's going to call our delete book function for us when it's clicked. So now if we go back here, nice. we can delete. And there we go. We have our book deleting and creating API, or UI set up with our API. Questions on anything I did in this one? I think at this point it's still pretty much stuff we've seen, except for maybe this on-click handler. I don't know if we've seen these disabled either. So remember, disabled, if you return true from the expression, it is disabled. So you need to return false. If you don't want it to be disabled, that's why we have to kind of reverse the condition here. And then in our form submit, again, we can do more checks to make sure that we're in a valid state before we do anything. Any questions on this solution? We'll Slack it out. What? That solution is in the next activity, yes. So I guess you don't need it then, Jesse. Okay, do. All right, let's take a 15-minute break. Come back at 8:25.
Yeah, fine. Do you have any get form that didn't work properly? And it's just like block it out. No. Yeah.
Shut down the middle of it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Why did you click every time you started to react?
The first couple of times I tried it, it was a couple of times. So we tried to do it once for work, and we got really into the environment and setting stuff up without it being too much work for us. So we stopped, and then I did it at home a little bit, but someone was waiting on me to get something done for him, so I couldn't quite get it far enough so I could actually make it site for him. So I stopped it. Yeah. And then I went back and did it again later, and actually sat down and did it. It wasn't so bad. When I first started, I didn't really know much about JavaScript at all. So I was jumping into JavaScript and jumping into all this tooling. I was still pretty fresh. I mean, this is probably 3 years ago. 4 years ago now. I don't remember exactly. So it was a while ago. So I definitely was experienced that. That's okay, Mike. We need resources to help you. We can help you.
I'm not a slow typer. It's just sometimes thinking and typing doesn't. So I just pick up the first.
There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you understand how it works.
That's what I do all the time. Make sure I understand everything.
Yeah. You can comprehend the code and you're good, man. That's all that really matters. As long as you can, go home and do it yourself. At least after doing it a few times.
Yeah.
What's up?
That's supposed to then take the basis of
Okay.
So, basically being out of town, everything, I'm kind of just running things on it, but it's, but we'll be able to do things. So you guys started on Saturday, so I understand.
Yep.
So I'll endeavor to have, work available with the content in it, to the best of my ability.
Okay.
I know you did some of that stuff before, but really the point is not to like really dive into it and give a full blown, oh, here's what we're looking for, but the basics of data management, dispatching, and stores, and blah, blah, blah. So, it's very rough, but I'm working on all the guys and do some people.
Yeah, as long as you have like high level points of what I need to cover, that's all I really need.
And really, I think week 21 is going to become a much more flexible week than other places, but I think really it's going to be like, I don't even know if it'll take all classes, right? So you turn that into probably which is all I'd ever do with Java.
Right.
Like Java for half the class, Project.
Works for me. Yeah, just you can work on yours.
Yeah, so I will, I'll announce it in the instructor chat, officially when it's ready, but yeah, that's all I'll have it, because it obviously won't be in the main repo, because it won't be, it's not part of the core curriculum.
Right.
But, that'll be what we'll endeavor to do, and then again, it'll be, I think principally conceptual, but, building out basic action stores and things like that.
That works.
Dispatchers, reducers, yada, yada, yada.
That works.
I've not done the production level VDEV stuff, I've never done any side things, because the last time I worked production level React app was before VDEV was a thing. Well, actually, it was a thing, but no one used it.
Yeah.
It was still, everyone was still using Reflux,
Oh, God.
which was fine, but no one really knew how to use that well either. So you ended up making all these redundant stores that the only job of that store was to call this other store and execute this. And it's like, they got the actions thing down well.
The
But then
correct
it was
is
like,
half of the flux
yeah,
and half of the guts.
yeah.
They half of do transform, like a migration and
Yeah.
so like
Yeah, I'm gonna do a lot on tomorrow.
yeah, I've done a lot of readers, so no problem.
Sweet. Well, yeah, and I appreciate Tim, Twitter, things like that, that would be helpful. They kind of fleshing that out. Again, it's still very, very beta, but, I think that Jason mentioned it, and I understand why we do the market curriculum, but what real value it provides is really tough to quantify.
With you on that one.
I mean, but then there's things like I had a student last who works area, and specifically like one of the things he was looking forward to get was the job. He basically like his job was taking like data entry, basically running jar files with different stuff. So his final project by himself was a little like dashboard for himself to do his things, and then he got his little node server so that it would actually run the jar files. So he literally automated his job. And like, my strategy, I'm gonna do this, show them how I'm doing it and why I'm so effective for the job, and basically levy that into I'll give you the dashboard, and all the stuff there if you make me develop it. I'm like, good luck, man.
Yeah.
That can go two ways.
Yeah.
It can go one of awesome, wow, isn't that great? And it can also go the great. Well, you just automated your own job.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See ya.
So, but like, for him, it was valuable. For everyone, right?
Right.
Anyway. Cool. I'll keep you updated.
Sounds good. Look forward to seeing it.
You bet. I'm sure it will be meh.
I'm sure it'll be great. No, it doesn't work that way. You should get diagnosed by a doctor. Or someone gave you a sugar pill, made you feel up. Really bad. That was a laxative. Okay, so this has been such a long time. I know that's why the AZ repo that we have. So that would be the good finder. Yes, no. This is right. Yeah. Feel like 25.
8:25. But everyone's. I'll take 7.
Yeah. One of them, 365, there's one back.
Because it's weird. Because there's like a repo from Trilogy that you have access to, but it's not like your actual account. Your actual account doesn't have anything in it. The one from
You're working on it?
So far, for the most part. No.
Are you guys going to TA next semester? The answer is no.
Oh, they're not working?
I don't have to review this. I think it's at full speed, but then it just like kicks up another notch.
That's really weird.
Yay. See, I don't know, like my internet is turned off. And there's no way to reconnect it without restarting the whole thing. It's like literally no way to do the house.
Alright, everyone's back. Okay. We will go ahead and get started. And by that, I mean, go ahead and do activity 11. Great. This one is going to be a little bit more complex. We're going to be using React Router now. And there's a new component you need to use with it called the switch component. So the README links to the docs. You definitely want to check that out. Yep, activity 11.
Last time we did run was 300 KBP.
Alright, let's go over this one. Fist of 5, how are we feeling so far today? 1? Oh my god. Alright. What in particular is tough today, Kyle? You gave me a 1.
I don't know. It's just something that's not clicking for some reason. It could just be today.
With the, is it the fact that we threw the API in there, so there's just, I mean, there's a lot going on or something? Or...
I think that's what it is. I was just like,
Well, hopefully this is the last example we're doing today, and then we're doing deployment. So hopefully we can get some questions answered and people can feel a little bit more comfortable. Because today is a lot. So let's try to go through this example real quick, and then if there's outstanding questions, we can go ahead and try to get them answered. So the first thing we needed to do in this one was set up the React router. So we need to set up the React router to route to the books page, and then we also need to set it to route to a no match page. And the no match page is basically like our 404. Whatever you're looking for, we can't find it. So here's our default page for you, or oops page, or what say you. That's pretty easy to do once you know how to use the React router, right? Once you understand how that component works, which is the hard part for sure, then it's not too bad to add the no match in. But the first thing we're going to need to do is import React router for sure. We'll do React router DOM. Oh, I actually forgot to do one thing before that, and that's install the stuff. But anyway, we'll let that go. From React router DOM, we're going to need the browser router, and we're just going to call it the router. We're going to need the route, and we're going to need another component called the switch, which we don't technically need in this part yet, but we're going to get it in here anyway. So, key component with the router, it has to be around everything, right? It has to be pretty much your root component. Boom, we've got a router. That's great, but that doesn't actually help us do any routing. We just have a router now. So it's a start, I suppose. Go ahead and run this just so it's going. I'm going to open up really quick. Or it won't. I assume it's good. Okay. So what do we need to do first? We need to route the books page to the slash and the slash books paths, correct? So we've got our books component here, and it just renders by default. So the first thing we can do is add in a route. We need to make it exact for various reasons, which we'll get into a little bit more later. And we need to tell it the component that we're going to render, which is the books component. So we can take this bad boy out, and we can copy it. Sure did. We can copy it because we just need to render the books twice, either in slash books or just the regular path. So let's go here, regular path, we're good. Slash books, we're good. Ooh, I didn't like that one though. Okay, so slash and slash books work, but anything else that deviates from that, it's still not having a good time. So the next thing we need to do is figure out how we can get that no match in there, so in case we do enter something that we don't expect, we can take care of it in a nice way. So that's where the switch component comes in. The switch component acts very much like a switch in code, where we have a bunch of different potential matches, and then we have effectively a default. So for our default, we can set that equal to our no match component. Now this is where that exact prop comes into play. With these first two, we have literally an exact match. If we have an exact match on slash or an exact match on slash books, we're going to go to these components. If we have anything else, because it's inexact and it's the last thing in our switch, we're going to go ahead and go to no match. So switch is literally like a fall through, like a switch is in code, where a default case that's pretty much always executed. And so we can go here, the slash works, slash books works, slash books 2, ooh, it does not work. Nope. Slash anything really that's not slash or slash books doesn't work. You can slash book. Oh, it appended the S there. Get rid of that. Slash book, can't find it. Alright, y'all with me up to this point? Any questions? Alright, the next component we need to map into our routes is the detail component. The detail component's a little special though, because we're going to use it to view the details of a specific book, which means it has to have a route parameter in the URL, right? So this is very, very similar to how like Express works, where you can specify the parameter with just a colon. Great. So we can verify that this works. So books takes us to all the books, but if we did another slash in like a 1, it's supposed to take us to the book detail page. It doesn't right now because the book detail page doesn't really know what to do with that information. But it's no longer taking us to the no match, right? We're not getting that 404 page not found. So we know we've matched correctly on the route. We just don't have anything happening here yet. So why don't we look at the detail page? Everyone good with this?
When I do like slash 1, like usually it makes me supposed to it reloads my books page.
Is your component set properly?
Yeah.
And do you have exact? Do you have books ID under books?
Not exact.
So it needs to be exact, and books slash colon ID needs to come after slash books. So here's the other thing about these switches. It's a good point to bring up. I'm glad you did. Not only do they have to fall down to the component that has the widest match, but you need to fall down that way in general. So the most exact match you can do is just the slash, right? That needs to come first, because anything after that could potentially match just the slash. After that you have slash books. That needs to come before books ID. If the books ID comes before that, it's going to match on that always, and you'll never get to books. It'll just be like, eh. At least if you don't have the exact. Now the exact kind of saves us here, and they didn't always have that. But if you don't have the exact and you start mix matching these things, good luck. It's going to be a ton of fun. Anyway, you want to do them in this kind of descending order, right? So from the most open URL to the most specific URL. So this is kind of the most open with just a slash, and then this is more specific, books ID, and then this no match is just whatever, it's our catch-all. Anyway, let's go to the details page. So in the details page, we know we have information about a book that we're looking for, and these books are going to have some crazy ID or whatever. And we want to be able to take the ID that we get in our match and load a book and then re-render with that book's information. So it's pretty easy to do because, as you can see from this note, we automatically get this match.params.parameter name passed into the props for us. And so we can easily use that on component did mount and just load the book we're looking for. We'll verify that in a second. You can see that there's a link right here in our main books page that will take us to the detail page, right? So we have /books and then an ID. So now that we have the detail that's able to be matched on that ID parameter, we can go select one of these books and theoretically it should take us to the detail page and load the information about the books. Alright, so if I click here, nice. Now this is where we have a full React app. This is a full stack app. This is no different than some of the best apps out there right now. They may be a little bit more fancier and do a little bit more, but the reality is they work just like this, right? Carvana uses React. You just built Carvana. Look at you. Competitor coming on up. No, you can't. I don't think you can sue them. You can try, I guess. So anyway, the point is we have this incredibly fluid and powerful app now, right? Because we can do routing. We can do all kinds of interesting UI transformations without posting back to the browser or the server, right? So we can maintain this kind of state on the client. We can kind of do a lot for the user to make their experience much better. And we've unlocked it now with React routing and this whole server client-server approach that we've fully fleshed out. Any questions on this example? For what part? I just added this. I did just paste it, yes. No, that's it. It's the code. You gotta look at the block. Figure it out. Any questions on this example? We'll Slack out the solution, of course. Okay.
Does it matter if we put that API column in its own function and then call it?
No, we can do that.
What's the better practice?
Depends.
Depends on how you want to do it.
Yeah.
Depends on what you're actually.
I would usually start with this, and then if I needed to use it again, I'd then put it in a function, right? But start with the lowest effort solution until you need to extend it. All right, the next activity, activity 12. You are literally taking this and deploying it to Heroku. So you have everything you need. Try to get it to work on Heroku. I'm going to try to do the same thing because I do not remember how to do it, so I want to help you solve some of those problems as we go through it.
Was the name of Heroku 5 applications?
Yes. Something along those lines. You passed the limit?
Yeah, I have to purchase the basic.
Or make a new account.
Sure.
Yeah, just make a new fake account. AdamDrag2@gmail.com. They'll never guess.
I thought that was lame as well. There's no get ignored in this file. We're adding everything. Did you just, yeah, no, I didn't get add. It's like trying to load up everything.
Yeah, you should have probably not let that happen, huh?
Yeah.
What's up?
When you put just nodes underscore module, will it grab every one of those node modules? Will it ignore every one of those node modules? Even the ones in the lower files?
Yeah, should. Any folder that starts with node modules. If not, you can prefix it with */ node modules, and then it will. */ // whatever. So
It works with the database that is seeded.
it doesn't need to be seeded. You just add your own stuff. So mine doesn't work because I didn't put in my credit card to get Mongo, but it's up. There you go. We have Rolando's. So we can all go on there and spam his account and get him charged. So everyone go on there and start adding books.
As long as somebody gives me a job after it. I pay for it happily. Let me see my credit card history next month, see like a $10,000 fine.
Pretty sure they'd notify you. Certainly hope so.
Now it comes in like 10-cent increments. So I followed the instructions on Heroku, and I did it through the CLI, but like now on my GitHub account, that repo doesn't exist.
Right.
So how would I link that repo to the GitHub?
You can add another remote. So you can, is there a remote Heroku? So you can add a remote origin and push to GitHub. So create a new repo in GitHub and set that URL to your remote origin. Add remote origin, that URL, and then just push origin master as opposed to Heroku master. And it's on both. How's everyone doing? Everyone starting to get it deployed?
Anyone running into any major issues that are holding them up?
Mine deployed, but it just doesn't work.
What is it saying?
Did you add Mongo? Yeah. I added everything, it just doesn't work. It doesn't do anything.
Anything in the console?
Oh, I didn't look at it. Did you add it before you pushed it? Oh, or after? If you added the Mongo after you pushed it, you have to redeploy it. That's all.
What is it saying?
Failed to load resource. Status 503.
Something's up on the server. I would look at Heroku logs. So do the Heroku logs for your app.
Just like git add remote.
Origin, or whatever you want to call it GitHub even. And then the URL to GitHub, and then just git push that remote's name, master, and it's on both. Anyone have any questions on any of this? We have one more thing to cover, but it's not code, it's the final project. in 3 minutes, I'm going to go over the final project then, unless anyone has any objections. I'll just assume you guys all figured it out and we're good. No? You stuck on something?
I just think the whole React stuff is just like so many layers of like complexity and stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, it's like I've been looking at like guides and like just like the basics of the basics of it. Because like, I think that from looking in manga to something like that, you know, something like that.
Yeah. More back end guy.
Yeah, I kind of like realized that I'm like, manga is looking at the React and box.
Very different.
Yeah, but I do want to like, get it down because I know like something you should
Yeah. It's a pretty good tech.
Yeah, I just think that from like what I'm favoring it is like back end.
Yeah. No, there's no harm in getting good at back end stuff. There's a lot of need for server side engineering.
From like my scale, like, oh, okay, this is cooler than manga. I was like, oh, this is even cooler. But I think it's just like, you know, the steps.
Yeah.
I think it's similar. Yeah, React is definitely like this layers of like confusion.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated. Most definitely. Did you get it working, Peyton?
Nope.
What did the logs say?
Request timeout. I don't know, has a lot of stuff in here. All kinds of stuff. I'm running over here looking for it.
So you can't connect to the MongoDB, something's wrong there.
Wonder where I messed up.
Try redeploying, like Rolando was saying. See if you can redeploy and get it to work. Do you get it to work, Garrett? I got a 404. But I got the 404 React page. Yes, because you pasted the route twice. URL twice.
Oh, dude, that's amazing.
Automatically takes you to the 404. Yep. Nice work. That's routing for you.
They're all about nesting and stuff.
All right. Anyone have any questions on anything we've covered today? Anything else that they can't wrap their head around? They want a little bit more clarification. We can always spend a lot of time Wednesday talking about this stuff too, because there's not a real strict lesson plan. It's pretty much like, oh, work on your homework and work on your project a little bit. So if you have questions then, if you want to let it sit for a while and kind of think about what's really stumping you, by all means. But any questions on anything? This is a tough class, so... Alright, so let's talk a little bit about final projects. Let's see if I can actually do this without it freaking out. Oh, cool. So we're really close to the end. It's pretty crazy how close we are actually, and how much content we really have left. Some of you might have heard JJ when he was in here. We have our week of extra React and Redux we're going to cover. That's really just kind of like extra content that we're going to do for you. And then we have a week on data structures and computer science stuff that's real kind of basic, I think, just to get your feet wet into more CS type things. And then it's projects. So we have like 2 more weeks of content, really, is all it is, and then it's projects. And then we're done. So you guys have all come a really long way. Obviously, we've learned a ton about the browser and JavaScript and HTML, and we've learned a ton about APIs. We've learned a ton about separate database types, so MongoDB and MySQL. We've learned a whole bunch of server-side tech, a whole bunch of client-side tech. We've learned about DevOps tools like Git and Heroku, and you can take that further with AWS and stuff like that. So there's an absolute massive amount of stuff we've covered in this class, and you should be really, really proud about everything that we've gone over, because it's an impressive tool set, especially as you learn to master it, right? So we're coming out of this. We're not masters of anything yet, but that's okay. It takes years and years and years to become a master of anything. So we have a great foundation, though, right, to take it to the next level. And you should be really, really happy about that, because it's an awesome skill set. It really is. So what are some of our goals? That depends. Why are you here? Get a better job, switch careers, just hobby. I don't know. Learn something to help in my current job.
I have too much money to do
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, whatever. You know, people do this for different reasons, right? My dad paid for it. I don't know, right? So, why every here doesn't matter. As long as you feel like you've achieved those goals or gotten close. Obviously, some of you, I know Garrett is still looking for a job, and he doesn't. Yeah. I'm digging myself a ditch here. Anyway, as long as you leave feeling like you've accomplished something from this class, which you all should, because this class is intense. It really is. It's a really difficult class. And if you don't feel like you've quite made your target in the class or whatever, we're here, the instructional staff. So Stephanie, Chris, and myself are here. Jason's here. Your career counselors, those people that I never talked to and have really no interest in talking to, they're here too. Well, I can't help you with that one. All right, so what's left? We're going to talk about a few things. We might have some lightning talks, and then we're pretty much going to work on our final projects. So lightning talks, near the end, when we're just working on projects and we have time, I might ask for people to prepare lightning talks. So 15 minutes, 20 minutes on something cool that they learned outside of class about Angular or some other JavaScript framework or something. Doesn't matter. Whatever you're passionate about in the space, right? So anything like that. We'll get to it more later. Never stop learning. Yeah, that's good. So the final project, right? So we're going to prove ourselves in everything we've learned so far in this class, which is an absolute massive amount of stuff, again. You do have a lot of time to work on this. They say plenty of time. I don't know if that's true. There's never enough time, right? You've learned, at this point in the class, you've actually learned everything you need to complete the project, right? Today was the last day. Technically, you've gone over everything you need to go over to complete this project. Now, are you comfortable in all of it? Different question. But we've seen it. So we can continue to expand on those skills and get a little bit better, right? You have a team of skilled developers to work with, at least 2-3 other people to work with to help get it done. You have experts like Chris and Stephanie to help you. Not me. I'm no expert. To help get this done. So you have resources too in class to help you. You know, you guys already have the relationship with us that you're going to get, right? So, you know, when you can Slack us, you know what you can do. You know we're going to help you. All right, our expectations. Whatever you build has to have some utility. So it has to have some real-world value. It has to solve a real problem. It has to do something like that, right? We've kind of touched on this topic with the other 2 projects, but let's continue. And now you can actually make a full-fledged, real-world product that you could potentially launch after the class. So don't set your sights low, right? Kind of shoot for the stars, if you will. Obviously, we learned a lot of lessons about planning too much ahead of time and not really getting as much done as we wanted because we were a little over ambitious. So go small increments. And I think if you kind of reverse the structure, start with the smallest, most basic functionality and just add upon that and add and add and add, I think you'll get a lot farther than you think. We expect you to have done your research about the problem domain. So what other apps are there? Are they mobile? Are they mostly mobile? Are they web? What kind of companies exist? What kind of tech's out there? What kind of problems still exist that aren't answered? There should be a lot of time and thought put into planning, which we're starting, Wednesday, so you have plenty of time for that. Report any problems that you guys face. So let us know if you get stuck. We don't want you to get stuck on something on this final project for weeks and weeks and weeks. We're here to help you, and we want to help you move forward. But remember, you have a long time and you have a lot of tech to work with, so you might get stuck and you're going to have to work your way out of some holes. We're not going to be able to help you for everything, even though we want to try. So let us know if you have a problem, and if we can't help you right at that exact moment, maybe we can at least give you some resources until we can come back around and help you, right? So it's going to be tough, but we're going to help you. Utilizing some of the project management systems we've used, like Git, the GitHub one, Trello's out there. I'm sure Jira might have a free one for small teams. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can use. Find one and try to seriously use it, at least to some extent. It doesn't gotta be crazy, but at least have some way to organize your work, who's gonna do what, when, those kinds of things, or at least organize your ideas. Maybe not who's gonna do what, but what are we gonna do as a group, right? And how are we gonna break down the functionality into small, manageable pieces? It's a really important thing, right? And you're gonna have to go through a lot of docs and kind of do your research on the tech you're using. So the requirements. You need to use React in some way. If you don't want to use it as your main UI framework, so say you want to use Angular or something, I'm okay with it, but you really need to get it verified with those two back there because they grade it. The reality is this final project is about you. It's no longer about us. So the final project should be something that you can showcase to potential employers, you can take out of here, and you can be proud about, right? I don't care if it has React for that reason. It should have some single-page application framework, so it needs something equivalent to that. Ideally React, because that's what we're learning, right? So it's going to be the easiest for your peers to kind of jump in and help you with. It's really up to you. We need to use Node and Express. If you use something else, that'd be wild. I mean, good on you for figuring out, but let's stick to Node. Your backend, MySQL or Mongo, they're leaving out Firebase. Totally cool as well. In my opinion, you should probably have MySQL or Mongo in there at the same time just because it'll give you a more robust stack. If you're just building a UI, you can kind of cheat and just use Firebase and not have a real server. We need a server there. So if you happen to use Firebase as your database, but you still have a server, I guess there's a debate there. But think about all the different types of tech you have available to you and how you're going to use them, right? You got to have get and post routes. You should have put and delete routes too. I don't know why they leave those out like they're any less important. It has to be deployed to Heroku, and it has to be live, working. We have to be able to use it, put data in there, see our data. It has to be persistent. Try to use 2 new libraries or packages or technologies we haven't discussed, right? So again, that same basic requirement, 2 new things. This time you need authentication of users. And we will be looking. Make sure your authentication is good. No plain text passwords. None of that garbage that people get caught on every day. It seems where 50 million records are pulled out of a text file on some dude's desktop. Yeah, none of that. Make sure your UN looks nice and polished. Your UI looks nice and polished. Make sure you have a nice organization. Does it have to be MVC? I don't know, but it has to be organized. And then you have to have good quality coding standards, of course. Do what you want with this project. Just make sure you talk to us first. Make sure it's not over ambitious or really outside of the scope. We'll let you know. I'm not worried more about ambition. I'm worried more about scope, right? So you can be ambitious and say, I want to do this, this, and this. But if it's too far deviating from what we've gone into, or it's just too broad, we'll probably say, come up with a little bit more, narrow scope on your idea. Your deliverables, these dates are obviously not up to date. We'll get you the actual deliverable dates, but we're going to have a plan like we normally do, design and research. It's not going to be Wednesday. It's going to be after the break. We're going to have like a final kind of functional push to get everything working, and then we'll have our presentations, right? So the deliverables, not that important right now. Don't worry about it. We need a plan. We want a plan. Some mock-ups would be great. A breakdown of what you're going to do. Scheduling tasks, well, that's kind of hard to do, but having some way to at least show us the tasks in the order that you're going to try to accomplish them would be good. Yeah, you have one for this week, you have one for last week, right? Yeah. You have to do. And I think the next one you might have one for data science, but this might be the last one for this week. So you don't have a lot left for homework. Groups. Again, pick your groups. At most 4. We will not let you have more than 4. Don't recommend going less than 3, but that's kind of on you. So any questions on the final project at all? Come up with your teams. Try to find out at least Wednesday. I would like to know all the teams, but Saturday at the latest. We should have everyone in a team ready to go so that on the break you can start working if you want, or you can at least start planning. Any questions here? All right, you're free to go. I'll see you all Wednesday. Yeah.